Right, as I was just discussing with Congressman Fallon, there's a growing concern among many Americans as they witness both the two-tiered system of justice and the left weaponizing the levers of government to target their opponents. So let me just ask you, are you concerned? Do you see this? Does this bother you? Are you disturbed by it? So how should Christians called to submit to the government authorities established by God respond to this? Well, first, I think we need to be praying. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they're spiritual. You know, Paul talked about this in 2 Corinthians. He said, "For though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but they have divine power to destroy strongholds." And this is a stronghold. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God and take every thought captive to obey Christ, being ready to punish every disobedience when your obedience is complete. We must resist responding to the lawlessness of the left with the same. We need to be very careful and discerning, as we were just talking about, to protect the law, to protect our Constitution. Even though it's being shredded by the left, we need to protect it, uphold it, and adhere to it. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Phill Kline. He is an associate professor at Liberty School of Law and the former district attorney in Kansas and Johnson County. Professor Kline, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to see you.
Good to be with you, Tony.
So let's talk first about this case, this indictment against Donald Trump that we see, former President Donald Trump. Your initial observations of this?
Well, twofold. First of all, these are laws that generally cannot be enforced without an understanding of the law's purpose, where it will be abused. The purpose of this law is to prevent people from trading on secrets of the United States contrary to the interests of the United States, and clearly Donald Trump did not do that. And so what you see, and unfortunately what we have today, we have more federal criminal laws than we can count. We have laws that don't require you to understand them for you to be convicted, laws that don't require you to do anything morally wrong for you to be convicted, and laws that don't even require you to have intent for you to be convicted. That the discretion available to our government today allows a prosecutor, if given the person, to choose the crime. And that's what you see happening, unfortunately, with the Department of Justice through a disparate treatment of former President Trump as it is compared to others who may have had technical or even intentional violations of the same laws. You don't see the department taking that seriously. So it is reflective of weaponization, and it's reflective of a growing belief that government can create the utopia that humankind wants. So therefore, we have to cede power of government to attack its enemies, rather than starting with the presumption that freedom and liberty are to be protected by government, cherished by citizens, and that government is to be constrained. And so this is a natural outgrowth, Tony, much as what you described of where American culture, unfortunately, is today.
Well, Phill, what you described is what we see in banana republics, where the law is used. Where the law is used by individuals to advance their own agenda and purpose.
Well, we see it throughout human history. We've seen it in this nation when we had laws endorsing slavery and how we treated women. We saw it with black codes in the South through the 40s. We've seen it anytime that human beings begin to believe that they have the path to creating the best society and aren't humble before God. This is what they will do. They will continue to grow their government in an effort to create that society and describe anybody who opposes them as an enemy to be punished. Yeah, we see it in the Old Testament. The nation of Israel said, "Give us a king," and God said, "Well, look, I'm a pretty good king. You know, you follow the rules I lay out, you will learn to have relationship with one another. If you want a king, he's going to take and take and take and take and take." And that's what we've got today. We've got, unfortunately, in America that has faith, greater faith in government than in God. And where you place your faith, you will place your treasure, your wealth, your children.
Well,
And that's what we see.
and you will ultimately have to submit to wherever
Well,
you place that. Now, with God, it's voluntary. With government, it's not. But this is the result of a society, a culture that's become untethered to the truth. Now, I want to go back for a moment to the law. In this particular case, you know, you've juxtaposed this to the you didn't mention by name, but Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, both had documents, and others have as well. But the president was a little bit different. And explain very quickly, we're going to be up against a break, and you're going to stick around, I know, through the break, but the Presidential Records Act gives the president, a former president, a lot of latitude, does it not?
yeah, basically he can declassify at will. And in comparing the two, Tony, look that Joe Biden had multiple years to prepare for his transition, because as soon as Obama was reelected, he knew the date that he would have to leave the executive office building as vice president. President Trump had a few weeks. President Trump was in contact, as it relates to his records, with the records administrators and the National Archives. Joe Biden was not. They found those documents. President Trump, you don't have any inferences. We know about the Russian collusion hoax, and we don't have any inferences or facts that indicate that he tried to profiteer as it relates to the possession of these records. You have a lot of smoking guns with Joe Biden as it relates to the possession of records that are directly tied to his son's business interests, and those who invested in the Biden family would have a desire to know what is in those records. So it's profound that A.G. Garland is this aggressive against Trump. Not profound. It's to be expected, unfortunately, of the Biden administration.
Well, and again, we're up against a break. Not in any way to be dismissive of what may be there, but it's on its face, there is a double standard that has clearly emerged that's troubling and does not provide the confidence to every American that justice is blind in this country. I want to ask you about this. There was an incident captured entirely on video earlier this month. It was police in Reading, Pennsylvania, arrested a man for quoting the Bible on public property at a pride parade. Now, Damon Atkins was standing near a group of Christians observing this pride march and rally, but found himself arrested less than a minute after his arrival. A minute! For beginning to quote a verse from 1 Corinthians. Police cuffed and escorted Atkins away to applause from the Pride March crowd. Now, according to press reports, the Reading DA threw out the charges shortly thereafter. I mean, again, no regard for the law or the Constitution. I mean, this is clearly a First Amendment violation.
You know, Tony, I know that you've been to the National Archives. You've seen our Bill of Rights. It's in a vault because it's written on parchment so fragile, if it was exposed to oxygen, it would crumble. It will not stop tyranny. It will not stop a bullet. That document, its only power is present if the truths reflected in its words resonate in the heart of a people. And unfortunately, there have been decades now of teaching in America that the Constitution is not relevant to modern society, that it is an impediment to government creating the society that we need. And therefore, now you see people with gross ignorance of how important free speech is, and free thought for that matter, to Western society and to our freedoms. This is happening throughout Western culture. You have persons arrested in Great Britain for silently praying. You have numerous pastors that have been arrested, and parents in Canada who desire to direct the medical care of their own children. So what you again have is a culture that is losing its tie to truth, and instead believing that government has the ability and the jurisdiction to create a perfect society. And human history teaches us that's a lie, and it always leads to a tyranny.
Right.
And you see some of the foundations of core American principles starting to crumble under the weight of this false teaching that's so present in our culture today.
Now, Phil, as you pointed out, and the what we see happening in Europe, what we see happening in Canada, very similar, but there's one big difference that you know is we have the First Amendment, as you pointed out, which protects that freedom of speech and that freedom of assembly. So in this particular case, this is where I think, like Paul, he exercised his rights as a Roman citizen and used the legal system, so to speak. And so I would think that this street preacher, Damon Atkins, has a strong case against the Reading Police Department for false arrest in violation of his First Amendment.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think that this type of case will proceed very far at all, that actually our judicial system is our savior here in adhering to the clear meaning of the United States Constitution. And you're right, Tony, in Western Europe, there is no constitution that protects free speech. There is not a Bill of Rights like we have in the United States. But even despite this, our Constitution is written word. And if words have no meaning, you can start to interpret them in any fashion you desire. And we increasingly see that in our culture, where speech of love is called hate, where intolerance is called tolerance. Where people claim to be fighting for truth and in the same voice claim that objective truth does not exist. This type of undermining of objective truth, we have to restore in our culture a basic understanding of the importance of these freedoms and the proper role of government.
And I think we do that by exercising them, and this is where I think this street preacher, I think Damon Atkins should turn and sue the city of Reading, Pennsylvania, for the violation of his First Amendment freedoms. I think as Christians we need to be aggressive in using the legal system to defend our freedoms. This is not a time to go silent. Phil, once again, out of time, but I want to thank you for joining us, and thank you for your insights today. Always great to see you.
Thank you, sir.